When a person asks you where you're from, and this is a question you get asked a lot when you move away from home, I'm secretly hoping inside that they don't ask me the next follow up question, which is, where are you from in India? And this is where the fun really begins. My reply goes something like this: I'm from Bangalore, that's where I've lived most of my life, but I'm originally from Punjab. I never lived there and I moved a lot throughout my childhood, so I consider Bangalore home. And then the person would ask me, what's my mother tongue or what do I speak apart from English? Well, my mother tongue is Punjabi, and my parents speak Punjabi at home, so I understand it fully, but I can't really speak it myself. I never developed the habit to. Do I know the local language in Bangalore? No, I don't speak Kannada, and I cannot understand the local language there. So, what do I speak when I'm not speaking English with my friends, or how do I speak in India? And then I tell them that most of my formal education has been in English, and my friends and I mostly converse in English too, with a bit of Hindi here and there. Now, at the end of this conversation, either the person is really bored because I've taken forever to explain where I'm from and what I speak, or they're left quite amused as to how I don't speak my mother tongue. And I'm left with a rootless feeling where here I'm in a foreign land learning German where I don't know my own mother tongue. And this is exactly the feeling that brings me here today. I want to discuss our languages and also draw parallels to the tools we use today to make our markings. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you have something to take away to help with your own practice. The average urban Indian consumes most of their information in English or an English influenced version of Hindi called Hinglish. One linguist attempting to define what language is famously said that a language is a dialect with an army. He failed to note that some armies are better equipped than others. Popular social media like WhatsApp, Instagram, or Facebook equip English with a strong army of its own. As a result, we see hybrids of local languages like Hindi mixed with English, which gives birth to a dialect of its own. When it comes to Hinglish, we can see a strong language army in the Indian landscape that come equipped with advertisements, Bollywood movies, songs, public signboards, social media, etc. A study that interviewed 24 people observed that majority of the people who speak Hinglish do not do it out of choice but because they struggle to speak monolingual Hindi. Now someone like that is me. As a result, the people who speak Hindi switch to speaking Hinglish to talk to other English speaking population. What we have then is a growing population of English speakers in a Hindi speaking land with a poor knowledge of Hindi. Learners of a foreign language who have not yet achieved full command of it will sometimes fill gap in their language 2 system, which is English, with elements from their language 1, which is Hindi. Here's a simple example of what English sounds like. If I have to say, I'm going to watch a movie with my friends and I will be back home late. In Shuddh Hindi or in pure Hindi, I would say, मैं अपने दोस्तों के साथ फिल्म देखने जा रही हूँ और मैं घर देर से लौटूंगी. But what I would actually end up saying is, मैं मूवी देखने जा रही हूँ अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ और मैं घर लेट आऊंगी. The result of this process, the so-called interlanguage, is a hybrid form of language. The term in itself comes with a negative connotation with reference to the biological context of mixed breeding. Hybridization assumes that the process is detrimental to an original state of purity and authenticity. This raises critical questions about the negative connotation behind Hinglish and whether it is actually detrimental for its speakers. For this, we must understand how hybridization affects the human psyche. And to understand this further, I came across a research by Murat H. Roberts, who insightfully explains the nuance of this phenomena. To quote him, when bilingualism, which is normally a transient situation, comes to an end, one of the languages involved will incorporate the other into its grammatical system. At the end of a bilingual situation, the grammatical victor must possess prestige. This sovereign quality, which is the quintessence of dominance, must be obtained and kept by men who govern and things which prevail. Languages do not deviate from this general law. The prestigeful is the victorious. Prestige contains two elements: power and charm. People must not only fear, but they must admire what they fear. Now, to understand more the effects of globalization on languages, looking back at the history of India and colonization, it's understood why English is considered superior to Hindi or to any other Indian language. To think of the conflicts between the desire for English fluency spoken by the upper class to the reality of limited English access and job opportunities makes sense. Today's globalized society requires us to be global citizens. English appears at a sweet spot where it serves to modern demands while also being rooted. But does this new dialect affect the self esteem of its speakers? Embodying a new culture comes with construction of new knowledge as well as destruction of the same. Our languages come from the land we live in and embody the collective knowledge of the people and their experiences with their land. To understand this further, I quote Russ Reimer from the National Geographic magazine. The ongoing collapse of the world's biodiversity is more than just an apt metaphor for the crisis of language extinction. The disappearance of a language deprives us of knowledge no less valuable than some future miracle drug that may be lost when a species goes extinct. Small languages, more than large ones, provide keys to unlock the secrets of nature because their speakers tend to live in proximity to the animals and plants around them, and their talk reflects the distinctions they observe. When small communities abandon their languages and switch to English or any other large language, there is a massive disruption of the transfer of traditional knowledge across generations. And this knowledge is about medicinal plants, food cultivation, irrigation techniques, navigation systems, seasonal calendars, and much more. Moving on to the next part of my presentation, I want to take a step further and draw parallels to what I feel is the same situation with our writing tools. As a designer, I find myself lost and at the same time inspired by all the creative tools I'm exposed to. I enjoy the convenience and flexibility offered by my digital tools, as well as the slow physical engagement with my analog tools. My last memory of writing and filling up notebooks to study or to understand a subject is of school. Post that, I have only used the first 5 pages of every journal I've ever bought and then losing tracks of my thoughts on different apps and platforms. In many ways, just like English as a language, typing is superior to handwriting. Typing offers more flexibility, customization, convenience, and accessibility, and further gives us the freedom to carry our information in our pockets without having to deal with the bulkiness of paper. It is by far the most practical way of organizing our thoughts. The human's need to constantly improve pushes us to create better and better tools. We can already see the emergence of hybrid tools which take the convenience of typing and the personalization of handwriting to give us an impressive experience of writing digitally using a stylus on a tablet. Much like the benefits of English, being tech savvy today opens up more opportunities for people and encourages the shift from analog to digital. According to Anne Trubeck, in an interview with Newsday, she says, "How we write, the tools we use, and how we make our letters or marks reveal something about our culture. It is a marker of who we are, and these things change the way we think." What are then the effects of this engagement with our tools on our thoughts? I stumbled upon an interesting blog by Anne Weil where she discusses Nicholas Gar's book, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. And he mentions scriptura continua as an early form of writing that used no spaces or punctuation marks. This made the writing and reading really hard up until the use of spaces and punctuation marks that were introduced in the 1000 AD. The physical act of writing got easier and it made writers pick up their pens and papers to start putting their thoughts down. Carr writes, "Their works immediately became more personal and more adventurous. They began to give voice to the unconventional, skeptical, and even the heretical and sinuous ideas, pushing the bounds of knowledge and culture." Post that in 1714 was the invention of the typewriter by Henry Mill. Carr further explains the effects of the typewriter by quoting Friedrich Nietzsche speaking to his dear friend. He quotes, "Nietzsche's prose had become tighter, more telegraphic, there was a new forcefulness to it, as though the machine's power, its iron, was somehow through some mysterious metaphysical mechanism being transferred into the words it pressed into the page." As he noticed that in his own work, His thoughts in music and language often depend on the quality of the pen and paper. Nisha replied, "You're right. Our writing equipment takes part in forming our thoughts. When we write a letter of the alphabet, we form it component stroke by component stroke. And that process of production involves pathways in the brain that go near or through the parts that manage emotion. The advantages of writing by hand can be a huge motivation for us to keep the practice alive. Psychologists have long understood that personal, emotion focused writing can help people recognize and come to terms with their feelings. For the next and last part of my presentation, I want to share an experiment I conducted to understand translation as communication and what really happens in the process. This experiment was inspired by the text Metaphors We Live by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, where they deconstruct the metaphors that exist in our vocabulary. These metaphors play a huge role in shaping our reality. One such metaphor was the conduit metaphor mentioned by Michael Reddy. He observes that the language about language is roughly structured by this complex metaphor. Ideas are objects, linguistic expressions are containers, and communication is sending. So essentially, the speaker puts ideas or objects into words, which are containers, and then sends them to the hearer, who then takes the ideas and objects out of the word and then processes it. To understand this deeper, I decided to deconstruct the conduit metaphor. And this basically made me look at communication as simply a process of translation. In the above figure, you will see the blue pen as an original idea. This idea is translated through a linguistic expression, which is language. This is the conduit. Through this linguistic expression, we get the output, which is the result of our translation. With my new tool, I decided to draw objects by only keeping my focus on the blue pen, which is my idea. And the results of this experiment gave me a clear visual as to what is lost in translation and what is gained. In the first result, you can see that the black line on the right are my ideas, and the purple line is the result of translation. A simple drawing of a cone is distorted at the end of the translation, but this distortion, even though it has lost its original character, reveals new information about the original idea. It suggests the starting and the end point of the drawing, and it shows me the vibrations of my hand while drawing. The second example again reveals new information in the translated drawing. Here, the translated image has two lines under the word, while the original image has one line. What this image captures is the movement of my pen in the air from letter O of the hello to the line under the H. The translated image still carries the same information as the original text because the meaning remains the same, but it also offers some additional information even though the drawing has changed. In the next experiment, where I've mixed image and text, the translated image captures the structure of the original idea but loses a whole lot of form. The writing Vincent on the original drawing is illegible in the translation, and the scribbly lines reveal the motion of my hand in the original drawing, but it loses most of its meaning when viewed in isolation. Now we arrive at the conclusion of my presentation. Certainly, there's lots to lose if we stop practicing our handwriting as well as our mother tongues. This isn't just about the knowledge that a language might possess, but also the muscle memory of our fingers making shapes on paper that makes sense to our brain. Our bodies are banks of information that accumulates knowledge gained through physical experience. I certainly do feel the prestige in being able to use modern tools and being part of an era that uses complex mechanisms. But I do wonder if I would have written about the same topic if my tool of choice would have been pen to paper, or how different my arguments would be. There's a small sense of rootlessness in these unified letters which look the same no matter what my emotion is. But I think it's safe to say that our handwriting isn't going to vanish anytime soon, but probably very slowly turn into scribbles that will gradually stop making sense to us until another form does. Advanced tools unite us, but it can be at the cost of generalizing diverse viewpoints. Our tools create our reality. I think it is worthy to remember the freedom that they provide us can seem like an illusion considering the influence they have on our thoughts. Further, my experiments are a simple way to visually describe the process of construction and deconstruction of knowledge. Thank you so much for making it till the end of the presentation, and I feel humbled that all of you have listened to me and my voice for so long. I only hope to leave you inspired even a little bit to embrace our unique origins, to speak our truth and channel that into our practice as designers and creatives, to create more diverse fonts, to create more diverse artworks which are true to us and help us learn about each other more, but also ourselves. Thank you so much.